Do you long for a more creative, meaningful life? Although 87% of us believe that unleashing creativity is important to our personal and professional lives, only 1 in 4 think they're creative. This fun and inspiring talk discusses breakthroughs in psychology, art, science, and business to help shake up your self-limiting beliefs and spark creativity in all aspects of your life. Dr. Chappel is an internationally acclaimed musician, businesswoman, and keynote speaker who inspires us to be more creative in work, school, and life. She has a BS from Georgetown and Ph.D. from Princeton in psychology. After being most inspirational professor at the University of California, Santa Cruz, which is a pretty inspirational place in the first place, so that's pretty good going, she ditched academics to be a singer, songwriter, and producer. And so I saw this quote actually this week, and it seemed appropriate to mention because of Nelson Mandela's passing away this week, and it actually seems particularly appropriate for your talk. So I will risk introducing you with this, then you can blame Nelson Mandela if you think it's strange. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishment the scroll. I am master, or I guess mistress, of my fate, and captain or captainess of my soul. Michelle.
Do you mind taking the podium?
Do I mind what? Remove the podium? Yeah. You got it? You want me to do it?
Let's keep it together.
Hi. Am I on? Can you hear me? Am I on now? Oh, there I am. It's interesting that you should quote Nelson Mandela, because
That's actually his quote. I mean, he took it from an English poet.
I know he did, and actually it kept him going when he was on Robben Island in jail for 29 years, was it? 27 years. I actually had my first CD released. Hello? Okay, there I am. Released in South Africa. And I lived in South Africa in 1993 and 1994 and a little bit in 95. So I was there when he was elected president for the first time. And he's amazing, very amazing person. So anyway, are you guys ready to shake it up?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah? Okay. How many of you have ever felt stuck in your life? Thank you for admitting. Does anybody feel stuck now in any way, shape, or form? Okay, all right, here's my first slide to let you know it's okay. It's normal to be stuck. We all get stuck, and in fact, getting stuck is not a bad thing at all. Is that me? Am I doing that? No? It's just randomly? Okay. It's okay to get stuck because a lot of times you just feel like you're stuck, but really, the next part of your life is trying to make itself known to you, and you just haven't seen it yet. So it's fine. So sometimes we get stuck at work. We might find that all of a sudden we don't like the job that we've been doing for a long time anymore. Sometimes we get stuck in life. We're making a transition. Like maybe you've retired, and now you're not sure what to do with yourself. It's a new phase. Sometimes we get stuck when we're working on a hobby. Does anybody? Hello? Oh. That's weird.
Coming in and out.
I know, and I'm not even doing anything. I'm standing very still. Can I do this? No. Does anybody out there have a hobby? Do you guys have hobbies? Oh, good. I'm really glad to hear that. Sometimes, you can even get stuck in a hobby. Maybe you're trying to write a book or you're trying to write a song, and all of a sudden you hit a blank and you're not able to move forward. So what do? Well, the way to get unstuck, obviously, is to get creative about it. And as we already talked about in the introduction, so many of us believe that creativity is important, but only 1 in 4 of us think that we're creative. How many of you think of yourselves as creative? Okay, that's higher than the average. That's great. Well, here's the interesting thing, though. We were all creative as children, all of us. And we still can be. If you think that you lost it, you didn't lose it. It's still there. You just need to find a way to reconnect with it. How many of you believe me? Good. That's a little bit okay. All right. So, you know, it's interesting too when you talk about creativity. A lot of times people think it's kind of magical. You know, the scientists come up with these brand new ideas, or artists make these breakthroughs, but I can't be creative. But actually, creativity is a set of skills. It's actually a set of skills that you can get better at. Being able to see things from more than one perspective. Can you see why that would get you unstuck? Yeah? Okay. Finding fresh solutions to old problems, obviously. Coming up with new, original ideas. Sometimes the way you get unstuck is by combining old things in new ways. Like, how many of you have an iPhone or a Droid? Okay, a few of you do. Just the fact that we can take pictures with them, that's weird. We're used to it now, but that was a new product that came from just taking old things and putting them together in new ways. But the best way to be creative is just to express yourself uniquely, to express who you are. And I have a quote there. Does anybody know who this is by? Life isn't about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. Does anybody know who said that?
Steve Jobs.
Steve Jobs. No, but it could be. George Bernard Shaw. You got the George part right. But there's a reason why I have that up there. Because having creative skills and being creative is not just about art and science and maybe a project you're working on. It's about your life. And being creative means having good problem-solving skills so that you can make positive choices that take your life forward instead of getting stuck. And the easiest way to get unstuck is just to be yourself. A lot of times we get stuck because we're trying to be somebody that we're not. So actually, just being your true self usually does the trick. But here's the problem. Oops. I'm jumping ahead, but here's the problem. I put a post up on Facebook about 3 months ago. And I don't know if you can see that little fortune cookie. It says, "You are cautious in showing your true self to others." And I asked people, why is that so? Why are we so cautious to be our true selves? And I don't know if you can read these, so I'll read these to you. But these are some of the responses I got. I have never gotten so many responses to a post ever. And they were full of emotion. So the other person isn't authentic, so why waste your time? Protection from opening up to wrong people who bash you and spread lies about you and gossip. So I'm not going to be true to myself because people are going to be mean. Many people are out of touch with who they really are. We're conditioned to suppress our authenticity. Yes, we are. That is true. Fear of being hurt, vulnerable. Fear of rejection. We don't know who our true self is, so how we can't show what we don't know. Conformity. So you can see that people were just hankering to be their true selves. Yeah, woo, I'll do. There were only 2 people out of hundreds of responses I got who said that they felt like they were being their true selves. And one person wrote, "If you find an answer to that question, please write a book about it. It will be a bestseller." I am writing a book about it. And this presentation is about it. So I'm going to go back a little bit. There's this wonderful quote. How many of you know who Martha Graham is? She's a wonderful dancer. And I'll read it just in case you can't see it. "There is a vitality, a life force, an energy, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and it will be lost." So here she is arguing for you to be authentic. And who is arguing for you not to be? All the scared people on Facebook. How many of you have ever ridden a bike? Okay. Okay, there's a couple people who have not ridden a bike. That's interesting. For those of you who have ridden a bike, have you ever noticed that if you're looking at something and you're afraid you're going to hit it, you hit it? Have you ever done that? It's amazing, isn't it? It's just, oh, I don't want to hit that log or whatever, and then you go right into it. But if you just ride and you get into the feeling of riding, you're okay, right? For my bicycle riders out there, right?
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. So I feel like all those responses on Facebook were more like looking at that thing that they're afraid they're going to hit. Whereas Martha Graham is talking about just being you, just do it. Just do it. When you are ready to change, it's not like a big sign comes down from the sky with an arrow that points this way and says, "Go here, my dear, everything will be fine. 3 steps to your right." That's not how it feels when you're about ready to change. When you're about ready to change, you feel like you want to pull your hair out. You're frustrated. And a lot of times people, and stuck. And a lot of times people, most of the time, we think that there's something wrong with that. But actually, it's a good sign. A lot of times we get stuck because we're playing an old family role. See how high-tech I am? Old family role that doesn't suit who we are. We had a bad experience in school. I don't know about you. I have a Ph.D. I was in school a long time. I had a couple of bad experiences in school. Not all teachers are awesome. Or you might be in an ill-fitting tribe, and by tribe I mean groups of people that you are a member of. This is a group, a tribe, and I think that this is one that you want to be in. It makes you happy, right? But a lot of times, somewhere along the way, we get off track with who we really are, and it's all about finding your way back, and that's how you get unstuck. Now, this is my 5th time back speaking here, I think. Yeah, and so I'm going to tell you a story that some of you have heard before, but I think it was the first time I spoke here, which was 5 years ago, so maybe you don't remember this one, but I really like this story. So it was a woman named Lynn, and she came to take, you remember it from that? And she came to take a Reinventing Yourself workshop from me. She didn't like her life. She was stuck. And we were talking one day, and she said, "Do you know why I became a dental hygienist?" Do anybody remember the story? Ah, good. And I said, "No, I don't." And she said, "Because my sister became one." Okay. Do you know why my sister became one? No. Because it was career day in high school, and she was sitting in a circle. She had no idea what she wanted to do with her life. So the girl sitting next to her whispered, "Why don't you become a dental hygienist?" So she did. Her sister ended up marrying a wealthy dentist and never had to do it again. 30 years later, Lynn was still doing it and hating it. Now you may say to yourself, "Oh, that's too bad. Poor Lynn. What an odd story." It's actually not. I can't tell you how many times I get people who come to my workshops. I've been teaching creativity workshops for about 17 years now, who have a story like this, but a lot of times they don't remember exactly where they got off track. Lynn did. So, the way to get unstuck is to get back to your true self. And over the years, I have found that there are 7 questions that really help you hone in on what makes you happy, what makes life really work for you. So as I go through these, please be thinking about your own life, okay? And here's an overview of them. What are you naturally good at? What makes you different from others? What fills you with passion, curiosity? What makes time disappear for you? What did you love to do as a child? What do friends ask you for advice for? And what would you do if money were no object? What are you naturally good at? Does anybody in here, do you know what you're naturally good at? Good, good. I'm glad to hear that, because a lot of times people do not know what they're naturally good at. So here's the thing about it. If you're naturally good at something, it comes super easy to you. What's hard is to realize that about yourself. Because it comes so easy to you, you think it comes easily to everyone else, and therefore you don't understand that it's a natural ability. Does that make sense to you guys? So the way you find out is by comparing yourself with others. So I'll tell you a little story about me. When I was at Princeton studying psychology, not music, I wasn't doing music at all. There was a presentation that was being made about music perception. All the psychology professors were there, a dean was there, the graduate students were there, and my friend was giving this presentation. And what she did is she played two pairs of melodies, like la la la, la la la, something like that. And we were supposed to say if they were the same or different. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm so sorry she's giving such a bad presentation because this is so easy. I mean, oh my God. I mean, everybody's just gonna say, you picked bad melodies or something. I was feeling really bad for her because to me it was sort of like this. Are they the same or different? Different, right? And keep in mind, I'm in the psychology program. Music is nowhere in my life. So at the end of this, what I thought was a bad presentation, she went around the room and had us call out our scores, and guess what I found out? I outscored everybody, including the dean who had studied classical violin for 10 years. I didn't know because I'd never compared myself in that realm before. Does that make sense to you? I had a workshop student named Mary who took ballroom dancing later in her life, and she had some private lessons, and at the end of her 10 lessons, the instructor said to her, "You're one of the best students I've ever had. You're like 1 in 10. She had no idea. So is that sort of sparking something in you? Okay, so that's question number 1. Question number 2, what makes you unique? How many of you have ever been to the Mojave Desert? Have you seen these Joshua trees? Aren't they crazy? I went out there with a friend of mine and just started looking at all of them, and you know, we couldn't find any two that were the same. And so a lot of times when I teach my creativity workshops, I say to people right at the beginning, you are like those Joshua trees. Everybody in here is different from everybody else, and if you're just your true self, you're automatically creative. And I always have a woman in the front with a Brooklyn accent, I swear to God, who says, well, maybe you're special, honey, but me, I'm like, that was a southern accent, sorry, that's all I can do. Let's have her come from Atlanta. But me, I'm like everybody else. And I look at them and I think, this is gonna be hard. But the truth is, everybody is different from everybody else, even twins. How many of you were born in Palo Alto? Look at that. Yeah. See? None of us were born in Palo Alto. How many of you were born in France? Me. How many of you were born in New Mexico? I just thought I'd give it a shot. The point is, when you start looking at our bodies, if you look around, we all look different. Our experiences are different from each other. We've been so conditioned to fit in and think alike, we forget how different we are and how valuable it is. Our natural abilities are different. Our passions are different. I didn't do anything. I swear I didn't do anything. So I have, here's that gentleman that I have up there in that slide. Who's that? That is Ray Charles. And I know I've said this one to you before, but this is just too good, and I have to tell you. He was interviewed by Rolling Stone. You know who he is, right? Ray Charles? Yeah. Yeah? Okay. Rolling Stone magazine interviewed him in 1977. Did you sit down one day and think, I'm going to invent soul music by mixing gospel and blues? He answered, it was not a conscious thing to sit down and mix nothing. It was a conscious thing to sit down and be myself. See, before I tried 1,000% to sound like Nat King Cole. Do you remember who Nat King Cole was? I could get hired, but nobody knew what my name was. So one day, I decided to be myself, and naturally, I grew up in the church, and naturally, I grew up with the blues, so naturally, the flavors came together because that's what I grew up with. That is true for you too. You may not be Ray Charles, but you have your own combination of interests and skills and experiences that make you different from everybody else. Is this ringing true with you guys? So what does this have to do with getting unstuck? He was stuck. He was what, right? because he wasn't going anywhere. And when I was at Princeton, I was stuck because I already knew. You know how hard it is to work so hard to get into one of the best schools in the country and to realize probably the second month that you're there that you don't really want to be there because it isn't really who you are. I was stuck. But these are openings. Okay. What fills you with passion? Isn't that a cool picture? Can you see it? Her violin is on fire. What's really important here is not your teachers, not your parents, not your siblings, not your friends, but you. And sometimes you have to do experimenting to find it. So I hope you're thinking about yourselves a little bit here. So I had a student named Jane. She was an executive at a Fortune 500 company. She was extremely smart. I could see her thinking, you know, I swore I saw smoke coming out her ears sometimes because she was thinking so hard all the time. And she took a workshop from me because she wanted to have a creative outlet from her hard work day. And she thought she should be a writer because her father was a writer. So the first time she took a workshop from me, which was 12 weeks long, I got her writing a little bit, but not that much. So then she took another workshop from me, and I got her writing a lot more, but I could tell she didn't really enjoy it. So then the third time she took a workshop from me, you know, that definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again. So she's sitting in the front, and I said, you know what, Jane, let's try something different this time. How about this time you don't write? And she got so pale, and she started shaking. She goes, not right? No. What do I, her ear, you know, I can see it. What do I do? What do I do? And I said, I don't know, but just not writing. Just for 12 weeks. See what happens. So the next week she comes in, she didn't do anything because she didn't know what she's doing anymore, right? Because she had a plan. How many of you have ever had a plan and it's not working? That's being stuck, right? So I thought it was really interesting because in the next week she came in, she looked like she was 8 years old. And I see this happen a lot in my workshops where people suddenly look like they're very young. And this is all she said. She said, I didn't do anything creatively, but I just want you to know that I ordered chocolate ice cream this week. I know, and I'm like, and she said, the reason why I'm telling you that is because I normally order vanilla, and I don't even like vanilla that much. So then the next week she came in and she made a pot holder, but it was like not square. It wasn't even a trapezoid. It was a weird shape, and it had weird colors in it. Like she had like orange and blue and green, but she was so happy, and she was holding it up, and I'm like, way to go. And then the next week she came in and she said, something weird happened to me. I was driving around, and all of a sudden I had an idea for a sketch pop into my head. I've never sketched before, but I went out and I bought some charcoal pencils, and I bought a sketch pad, and I started sketching, and I really enjoyed it. She looked really happy, and also I noticed she wasn't thinking as much. By the end of the workshop, she had graduated to painting, and she actually brought a painting in of her husband. That's Vincent van Gogh. Just in case you thought she was married to Vincent van Gogh, because that would be weird. But she did this beautiful painting of her husband, and she was quite gifted. And she thanked me from the bottom of her heart for making her stop writing. So do you understand what I'm saying? That sometimes, because you think, oh, well, if it's a passion, I'm going to know what it is. But you might not right away. So give yourself permission to experiment a little bit. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. What makes time disappear? Can you see my clock? Isn't that cool? That's Salvador Dali. I love that clock. So what happens when you do the thing, or sometimes it's more than one thing, that is really unique to you? When you do it, time disappears. Do you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. You are so engaged by it you lose all sense of time. You're in the moment. And sometimes you don't even know that you've been doing this thing, and your stomach starts to rumble because you're hungry and you forgot to eat. Has that ever happened to anybody in here? Yeah. That is a sure sign that you're doing something that you love. Jane, in my last example, when she started painting, she was upstairs in the attic, and she told me in class that she got so caught up in it that it was 9:30 by the time she finished, and she missed dinner. And her husband had kept her meal warm, and he kept making her dinners while she painted, and that's why she painted a picture of him. And what's really cool is she won an award for that painting that she did of him. Now, what it works for some person like Jane is not necessarily what's going to be the thing for you. For me, I have Adele singing up there. For me, it's writing songs. So I close myself off in my studio, and the way it feels, and I'm sure some of you have felt this before, maybe all of you, you sort of feel like a little blissed out, and you feel like something is kind of working through you. So I'll be playing the guitar, and all of a sudden the chords will sort of go in an order that I'm not sure I chose it. I'm just so in the moment. I'm just flowing with the ideas as they come into my mind, one after the other after the other. Do you know what I'm talking about? Have you been there? Okay. So I do it when I play music. Now, I ran into an old colleague of mine at Santa Clara University, which is how I got this gig in the first place 5 years ago. And I was telling her, because, I left academia to become a musician, which is weird. And I was saying to her, because sort of a little bit to defend, but also explain, as like, wow, when I write songs, I just melt into the moment and I become one. And she goes, oh yeah, me too, when I write research papers. Now, when I used to write research papers, I was looking at the clock every 5 seconds, because that wasn't my particular calling, but it was hers. Does that make sense to you guys? All right, so have all of you had that feeling ever? Of just sort of melting into the moment? Okay, and by the way, the trick is, when you're working on something, you don't want it to be too easy, because your mind can wander, and you don't want it to be too hard either. Just challenging enough so that it takes all of your attention. That'll put you in the moment. What did you love to do as a child? Or as a young person, a young adult, a teenager? It's very important that you widen that scope, because a lot of times people say, what did you love to do as a child? And you think of yourself as 3-year-old, dipping a Barbie into olive oil or something. You're like, nah, I don't think that you're going to do that as a career. But even as a young adult, a lot of times I have to tell you, and I've seen this in my workshops so often, people already know. They already know in high school what they love. But they get off track because maybe a family member doesn't value it. Maybe a teacher ignores it or punishes it. Can you relate to this? Can anybody relate to this? When I was 4 years old, I used to play pianos. I would go into friends' houses and play pianos like I was classically trained. Nobody in my family noticed. So I kind of forgot that I could do that until that thing happened to Princeton. So do you see how, by the way, I hope you're noticing that the answer, if you're doing it in your mind, you might find that the answer is the same for a few of these? Yeah, that's a good. So I want to tell you, so I was just ignored. It wasn't that they were being mean or anything. They were more visual artists, and music didn't resonate with them, so they didn't see it, so I didn't either. I forgot about it. It happens so often. So I had this one woman, Pamela is her name. She's in her 40s. She wanted to write fiction, and here was what was really interesting about her. Her husband wrote fiction. Her son wrote fiction. But she did not. And it was, again, one of these workshops that went for 12 weeks, and I was starting to get worried because we were on week 11, and I had not helped her yet, and she wasn't writing yet. And I happened to talk about school that 11th time we met. And I know a lot about schools because I've been on both sides of the desk, right? And pretty much the truth is, if you figure out what the teacher wants and you spit it back out at the teacher, you're going to get an A, right? What happens if you do something original? Could be an A, could be maybe something else. And all of a sudden, she puts her hand up in the air like we're in high school, which I thought was interesting. She goes, I know what it is, I know what it is. I said, well, what is it? And she said, when I was in high school, I was taking a creative writing class. And I was really excited. This guy gave an assignment, and I thought it was really cool. And I thought if I changed it just a little tiny bit, I could really do something special. And I wrote this paper, and I turned it in. And he gave me, what do you think? A D? That's what most of you said? Yeah. He gave her an F. He gave her an F. I give him an F for that. That's uncalled for. Yeah, it's a nasty thing to do. And so she looked at me, okay, this is our 11th class. We only have one left. And in the last one, we usually share some kind of creative project. And she said, that's what she said. You know? And she goes, well, what do I do now? And I said, write about it. Write about what happened. And the next week she came in. She got unstuck. Do you see how these things get you unstuck? I think I have enough time to tell you about another one. Yeah, I'd like to tell you about another one because sometimes they can be pretty serious. A lot of times they're fairly traumatic. I hope this is resonating with some of you because I had something happen when I was at Georgetown that I forgot about for years and years where a teacher told me I couldn't write. And so I haven't written until recently. I started writing a book and it all came back. Oh, that's why I haven't been writing the book. So really think hard about this. You'd be surprised. But I was teaching a Reinventing Yourself workshop, and I don't even remember what we were talking about, but it was the second day, and I had a beautiful young woman in this workshop who came because she didn't know what she wanted to do with her life, had no idea. And I'm not sure what I had just said, but suddenly she started crying, I mean sobbing. And I said, well, I'm sorry, did I say something to upset you? And she said, no, I just remembered something. And I said, what was it? And she was raised in Mexico City. And as a young person, she wanted to go to medical school. And she had a member of her family say to her, I don't think you got what it takes. I don't think you can handle dead bodies. And so this person actually took her, I don't know how, I didn't ask for details, but she's telling the whole class this, took her to a morgue in the middle of the night, somehow, and showed her a dead body, and she fainted. And she completely forgot that she wanted to be a medical doctor for all of these years because of that event. So you understand what I'm saying? Sometimes you need to dig deep to find these things, but they're there. So if you're feeling a little stuck right now, it could be something that goes back in time, like that. Okay. Now I'll tell you a lighter story, so because I know that was pretty heavy. Okay. What do friends come to you to ask for advice about? I put Einstein up there because clearly Einstein is like the kind of guy that you might ask for advice about, about physics. And you usually when you think I'm going to ask for advice, it's going to be something lofty and, but not necessarily. So I had a friend who I inadvertently coached, funny enough. She always looked awesome. And I remember one day I talked to her and I said, and this is before the word awesome was even, used. I said, you always look awesome, Jackie. And she said, well, anyone knows how to shop. And at that moment, I will never forget, I was wearing this long shirt that had purple and green horizontal stripes on it, really baggy, down to my knees. And we both looked at me, and it was so obvious that I looked hideous. And it was okay. And it was right around that time I was figuring out that I wanted to be a musician. And so because she was so good at picking clothes out, I asked her if she would help me come up with a style for my first CD. So we went shopping, and she kept bringing in all these really cool looking dresses that I would have never tried on myself. And they looked great. And I said to her, Jackie, You have an eye for fashion. That's why I put that up there. You're amazing. So it turns out that she started to take this seriously. She started working in a kid's clothing store. Eventually, they figured out that she was good at this, and they had her pick out the next season's line, and then she eventually got promoted to being a buyer. Now, I want you to know that Jackie had no self-esteem, thought she was a measly housewife that had nothing going for her. So pay attention. If somebody asks you, you know, how do you get that fungus off of your toe? Why do they think you know that? I don't know. There may be a reason. Okay. And the last one, what would you do if money were no object? Okay. Usually when I ask this question in my workshops, I would go around the world. I would buy a mansion. I would buy a yacht. I would have my done. I would, you know, just whatever. Just, you know, and you have to kind of go through that, because sure, you would do all these things. But what's important, what this question really means is, what would you do just because you love doing it for the sake of doing it? Does that make sense to you? And who is that up there? Can you tell who that is? Who I have up there? Joseph Campbell. Do you remember Joseph Campbell? I love Joseph Campbell. You know I love Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell is the man who wrote The Hero with 1,000 Faces. He's the one that talks about the hero's journey, which I came and talked about last year. Little known fact about Joseph Campbell is when he was at Columbia studying troubadours, that's what he was doing his dissertation on, troubadours and love, and then he got time to study abroad for a year, where he saw Matisse paintings, Moreau paintings, learned about a guy named Carl Jung, psychologist who was studying dreams, and heard about this guy named James Joyce, who was writing a little book called Ulysses. Are you familiar with some of this? Really, really different. And I think maybe you're going to start to see how this all ties together. And he just was so excited. And he started to remember when he was a little boy and his parents would take him to see cowboy and Indian movies. He was always rooting for the Indians. He was very interested in Native Americans, in symbology, in mythology. All started to come back to him. So he goes back to Columbia to his dissertation group and says, it's changed. It's all opened up for me. I don't want to write about troubadours anymore. And what do you think they said to him? You have so much invested. Yeah, sorry, you have to keep doing this. So guess what he did? He just left. He left. He had earned all this money playing saxophone, rented a cabin in Woodstock during the Depression, and did whatever he wanted for 5 years, which was learn about Moreau and Matisse and James Joyce and all of these people. Loved it, and just when he felt like he never needed to work again because he was so happy with his life, he got a job at Sarah Lawrence, and he ended up writing A Hero with 1,000 Faces. That's why you hear him say, follow your bliss. That's what he did. Does that all make sense to you guys? Okay, so here are the 7 questions again. Did you ask these to yourself, I hope, a little bit? Did you find an answer to some of these? Did you? Okay. If you found an answer that was in common to a lot of those questions, it doesn't have to be all of them, do that thing, whatever it is. Whatever it is. In fact, do it today, because that is your true calling. And for some of us, it's more than one thing. Listen up, this is important because a lot of people get stuck here. Sometimes it's more than one thing. So for me, it's singing, writing songs, it's writing, and it's talking. I like doing this. So, but you know what? For many years I got confused. Why do I write about, I'm a writer, I'm a singer, I'm a speaker, I don't know what I am, and I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, I write, speak, and sing about the same thing, this. So there's the consistency. And I have a pipe organ up there, because I like to use it, and I'm going to close on this, I like to use this as an analogy. When you really come to accept what makes you different from everybody else, that's when your life becomes unstuck. And it's like each one of us is a pipe organ. Some of us are big and long, and when air is blowing through, we come out like sounding like this. Some of us are little and short, and we sound like this. If I try to be a pipe that I'm not, nothing's going to happen. When you're trying to be somebody you're not, it's almost like your pipe is bent over. You need to remember Martha Graham was talking about that vitality, that life force? Think about it as that's the air that's coming through the pipes. We're all here together. We're all having a human experience, but no two of us is alike. And as that life force comes through us, it is our duty, really, in a way, to be who we are so that we can make our own sound and shine our own light and go from being stuck to shaking it up. And that little fortune cookie I want to add on at the bottom here says it's time for a change. Don't be afraid to be your true self. Rock on. That's it. Do you have any questions for me? I'm sure you do. You always do. You guys always have questions. Oh, sorry.
When do we get to hear the music?
Well, I would do that after the... Now, maybe? Okay, yeah.
I understand your presentation as being directed to an individual, but we each interact with other people in our tribe and our community.
Yes.
So what happens if being one's true self is not acceptable or creates tension with other members of the community?
Yes, I think that is a really good question, and it does keep a lot of people stuck, and I will tell you what the honest answer is. Find a better fitting community. I have a friend, and this may sound weird to you because this may not be a tribe that fits you, but I have a friend who has an ability to put her hands on animals and heal them. And her family made fun of her for that forever, and she didn't start doing it until recently, and I've been one of the people who has encouraged her, and actually she's been helping me with my cat. And she's got a real gift, but you can have a real gift in it if you're surrounded by people who don't see it or try to diminish it. It's going to be hard for it to come out. Yes?
Sorry, can I bring you the mic?
He's going to make the question more difficult.
How about if we say family instead of tribe?
Yes,
But you
and
don't
that
have
is
an
usually the
opportunity
problem. I will
to
tell you right there. So this
change.
is what you do, and I've been there. Most of us are there. This is what you do. You accept them for being different from you. Maybe don't spend quite as much time with them as you have been, and definitely find your tribe that supports who you are. And make sure you spend most of your time doing that if you can. If you can. Because when you do that and then you come back into the family environment that does not embrace who you are, it won't affect you near as much. You need to find people. I'm so glad you asked that question, actually, because you can't do this unless you've got people. Unless you are extremely strong. Maybe you can, but it's so much better if you can find like-minded people, and it only takes one. It's not like you have to have, because I say tribe, and it probably makes you think like, 10,000 people, but actually just one other person who really gets it, gets you, that you can be yourself around, that supports you without even trying. That's all you need. That's all you need. And it's not like you have to divorce your family, just maybe get some distance. And then maybe come back a little bit later. That's what I ended up doing. And then, it's funny, my parents weren't ever that crazy about me singing, but I went to Atlanta 4 years ago to sing, and they came to every single concert that I gave. Every single one, which they had never done before. And I think it was because I did distance myself for a while, because I needed to do what I needed to do. And then it all came around in the end. That can happen. It can. But you needed that support. Yeah.
You reminded me of something I'd forgotten from my childhood. The only way I got to go to college was my father said, stop the scribbling and take something worthwhile. So I signed up for pre-med. I have been a medical writer for over 25 years, but the best part was the writing.
Yeah.
And so I guess the other question I have for you is, if you finally discover what you really love, what if you can't make money at it?
It's fine. Remember, what if money is no object? And you know what? Even if you never make money at it, even if you never get recognized for it, if you engage in it regularly, you will be happy just because you'll be in the moment, which blisses you out. You'll probably start to find people that are more like you to hang out with. It's just one thing leads to another, and you may get money for it down the line. So, yeah.
The thing I didn't tell you was that I did oil paintings and sketches without any training whatsoever.
Yep.
That's the thing I'd love to do, but I'm not sure there's much talent there, but I sure enjoyed it.
That's all that matters. And by the way, last time I was here, I think, or maybe 2 years ago, I feel like I'll be here like in a decade later. Do you remember 8 years ago when I had a learning curve? And basically it was showing what, people are scared to try something for the first time because they're not necessarily that good at it. Even if you're gifted, you might not be that good at it, but if you just stick with it, you will get better. So show up. But I think you know exactly what you need to do. Yay! Okay.
In your next to last slide, when you had that organ, okay,
Yeah.
It made me think of a movie, 9 to 5, which is very famous.
The Dolly Parton?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's right. And then they made a musical, okay? And in the musical, they have a version of Handel's Messiah, which goes, joy to the girls are free, and they're free. So that was fantastic when I saw that organ.
That's
Thank
cool.
you.
That's combining old things in new ways. That's very creative. Yeah. Other questions? I hope this is like sinking in because this could really make you a happier person down the line. Yeah.
I was thinking of her question, and I think those of us who have something that we can't not do have to do some other work
Yeah.
to fit it in.
Yes.
And that's what we have to do, is make some money and fit it in until midnight if you can.
And luckily, and that is absolutely true. It's not like people always just change careers, although sometimes they do. But here's the interesting thing too: if you're tired and you come home from work and you're thinking, I'm too tired to paint, do it anyway, because what'll happen is if it is your true calling and you're in the moment, it energizes you. So it has the opposite effect that you would think. You would think, oh, it's going to make my day longer. It gives you energy. So even if you have to do it on the side, which I have many times, do it. Just like they say, go to the gym, you get more energy. Same thing with practicing whatever it is that's, a true gift for you. It's worth it. Your life is happier if you do it than if you don't. Yeah.
Just have one question.
Yeah.
As far as what happened is if you're in a space where you're doing something which is sustaining you, right? And you're okay with doing it. You're sort of happy, but you're not, like ecstatic. Like where your heart is, beating, bum, 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 bum.
Yeah.
And you really haven't find like your expressing your true self. Like, what would you suggest to someone?
You haven't done it at all?
What's that?
You haven't expressed your true self at all?
Maybe a little bit, but not like let's say you're in a state where you have a career and you're doing your thing.
Yeah.
And you're like happily.
I know what you're saying. You're going along, but it may not be the best thing for you.
Well, or maybe you're going along. It may not be the best thing, but like, are you going to how do you go to the next level?
Well,
Like,
first you have
do
to figure out what that thing is that you need to do that would make you happier, which usually starts out as a hobby. And you know, I don't know why this popped into my mind when you were talking, but a lot of times the reason why we're not creative is because we block ourselves. So when you're a kid, you have a thought, you act on it, right? And then usually the mom or dad says, no, don't eat the dog food, right? So you stop, right? So you learn to suppress your own instincts, but they're there. So I think you need to get back in touch with your instincts, your very first thoughts, is the way they're described by Natalie Goldberg, who wrote this wonderful book called Writing Down the Bones. She talks about it as first thoughts. We all have them, and then we censor them down to third, fourth thoughts, and then we think those are our real thoughts, but they're not. There's something beneath that's more like eat the dog food. Okay, so yeah, I know I'm really going to get you guys to do this, but this is my thought about you. I hope that you can find a way to take breaks from your work, even 20 minutes here and there. And if you can do something that engages you, that's repetitive, like running, I'll just throw things out. Running, sweeping, doing the dishes, something where you're, you know what I'm saying? Something that's repetitive, mechanically repetitive, swimming. Anybody else have ideas? Riding your bike is a good one. Yeah, thank you. Right, just don't hit anything. What happens is it gets you into sort of a flow state, okay, where you'll realize after a second you haven't been thinking. And usually somewhere in there a thought will pop out of nowhere. That's what you should do. I don't know what it is, but you need to get yourself in a position where it can make itself available to you. It's probably trying to talk to you right now while I'm talking to you, but your mind is busy and I'm talking. So it can't really make itself known to you. But if you get yourself in sort of do something repetitive that gets your mind out of the way, you will have a thought. Act on it.
I had a comment about what you were saying about if somebody, was a question earlier from Peter, I think, somebody, you know, think you want to do something different, change, and they think you're stupid, you're an idiot, you're going to fail, you're going to make no money, whatever.
Yeah, all
what
those,
you do with,
like the Facebook posts.
right, all
yeah.
those negative things.
Yeah.
Well, the other approach, surely, is you can just say, okay, that's fine, I accept you think I'm an idiot, and I'll fail, and I'll lose all my money, and you're still my friend, and I still like you, and simply not react to that. I mean, it's quite surprising how people soon dissipate all that if you just say, cool, you think I'm an idiot, good for you.
I totally agree with you. And there's this great Whoopi Goldberg. You remember Whoopi Goldberg, right? Oh, remember, she's still here. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's something like her mother told her early in life, you don't have to make people like you. It doesn't matter whether people like you or not. Because apparently she'd been a kind of an odd child. Anyway, and that liberated her. So I think you're absolutely right, and I agree with that. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Thank you. Yes?
What about volunteer work? I think other people are doing something which I think is critically important, that the fate of the Earth is at stake, whether it's getting rid of nuclear weapons or stopping the global warming or whatever.
Absolutely.
And they're not enjoying their work.
Yes.
It can be very frustrating. It's hard to get anywhere. You run into all kinds of resistance and arguments, and people who don't want to deal with it, because and the politicians don't want to deal with it, and the world is getting worse.
Yep.
And so I find myself even working with people. We're working for a common cause, but we get into disputes among ourselves, and
Yep.
sometimes it gets very unpleasant.
Yeah.
So so I enjoy some of what I'm doing, but a lot of it is very frustrating.
Well, you know what? I can relate to what you're saying. Homelessness is a big issue for me, and I've been raising money for the homeless a lot over the years, and I've been very frustrated with the infrastructure of some of the organizations, and every once in a while you run into somebody who's running an organization that you thought was wonderful, and they're a narcissist and difficult, and it happens. It does happen. And so what I do is I just try to steer towards the people that I can work well with. And the difficult ones, if possible, I work with a lot of different organizations. I just steer towards the ones that aren't difficult. And maybe I can't make a difference everywhere, but I find where it works, because you can, I mean, even do-gooders can get trapped in that. So it's just like with the pipe thing, you just want it to flow. So any way you can just flow towards the light and away from the dark, and keep your heart. Because I think sometimes what I've seen with some of these people in homeless situation is they forget why they're even working on what they're working on, because they get so caught up in little things. So to always bring yourself back to why you're really there, I think put your heart back in the center stage. You know what I'm saying? So you're back to feeling good about it. I mean, I don't know your particular situation, but that's what I've done. I just flow towards the people I can work well with.
So I think we've only got about 5 minutes. If we're going to get some music, you may...
Yeah, my hands are absolutely frozen. So you guys, I have no idea if I can even do this, but I'll try to play I know, I'm so cold. I'll play a snippet anyway. Ah! Okay. Those are good questions, though. I just want to tell you, I really like those questions. Thank you. All right. This song is appropriately called Shake It Up. Do you ever feel like life is passing you by? You're a hamster in a wheel, just trying to keep up with the times. Getting it right, except for you. What should you do? Well, shake it up, remember your dream. Shake it up, closer than you think. Shake it up, follow your heart. It's never too late to do what you want. Shake it up. Rock and roll, sorry you guys. Do you ever ask yourself what you really want to do? And I mean from your heart, not from your head, not a should. When you were a child, what made you smile, made you feel good? You gotta get it. It could be your calling. Well, shake it up, remember your dream. Shake it up, closer than you think. Shake it up, follow your heart. It's never too late to do what you want. Shake it up. Hey, this was a load of fun. Yeah.
Is lunch ready, or do we have time for one more question?
Any more questions?
Is there time?
I would
Can
love to
somebody-
keep going. There's such great questions.
Lunch ready? Can somebody tell me? Looks like they're still putting dishes out. One more question?
Yeah, any more?
Actually,
yeah,
I think
please.
Pete-
I'd love
let's start
more.
with him.
On your lyrics, are they from your mind? Do they come from the humanist kind of thinking?
I think that I wouldn't say it's just humanist. I definitely want to help make the world a better place. I've noticed that my music seems to fit into a lot of different kinds of scenarios. So I wouldn't say just humanist, but I would definitely say I do feel like I align with your values. Absolutely. I do. Yeah. I don't know if you guys really dig rock and roll, but But you can see, by the way, that's an example. That song and this talk, there's kind of the same thing. So you might have something in you, like you might think, I paint and then I also write. But maybe your subject matter is the same, you know, so dig deep. Any other questions? Come on, you guys are so smart.
Actually, lunch is ready, so it's going cold, so thank
okay.
you very much, Michelle.
All right, thanks.